Peace be upon you, Allah's blessings and His mercy. Assalamu alaikum from the Palace of Ankara. I would like to salute you and welcome you in another episode from Balaḥdud, Without Borders. In the second part with Dr. Ibrahim Kalen, the spokesperson for the Turkish presidency. We'll be talking to him about the nitty-gritty of what took place during the 15th of July. What do we understand when they got to the palace? I mean, the plotters, the coup plotters, and having two military advisors belonging to the Gulenists.
Well, this is a typical work of the Gulenists. They try to put, their key people close to key people in position of the president, of the chief of the army. And since they have this habit and tradition of hiding their identities, the Gulenists were able to raise through the ranks and come to these very key positions within the presidential palace, within the military, and in other institutions. Of course, when you work with your military, you want to trust them. These names are proposed by the military to the president's office. And since the president is the commander-in-chief, we work closely and directly with the Turkish military. And you don't doubt that they will be be the traitors and betraying you, in this process. So it was a shock. I mean, we always had a doubt about some of these people, that when they get this close, you have to be careful. But no one, have imagined that they will be so brutal, so murderous, so crazy to do what they did on that night. Now, as a result, of course, now we are taking a number of measures. We are abolishing all these institutions. They will not be near the president anymore. And we are taking extra measures to make sure that people in the military are trained only to serve their nation. You see, the problem with this coup mentality is that they think that they own the state, they own the country, some of the soldiers. And we say, look, the nation, the country belongs to the nation, belongs to the people. Not to me, not to you, not to anyone, but to the nation itself. And everybody has to serve the nation, the country, not my own particular interest, not my own particular group or jama'ah or this and that. Because when you are a civil servant, you have to serve everyone without discrimination. Now, of course, the majority of the people in the Turkish army, in fact, serve their country, love their country, there's no doubt about it. But there is always this clique, faction, which can be very dangerous and deadly when they act as they did on July 15. Now, of course, we are, as I said, taking a number of measures in military schools, in military judges, in other training programs within the military to make sure that these things do not happen again.
If the schools of Golan worked since 1989, that means that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of alumni, and they were planted or implanted within the state. Today the army said that there are 8,681 people, represent 1.5% of the army. They were rounded up. Do we think that these 1.5% of the army belong to the Golan organization? Yes, please.
Well, it could be less, it could be more. We will find out as the investigation continues. I think they gave that number on the basis of the people who participated in the July 15th coup attempt. There might be some other sleeping cells. Again, hiding is one of their key characteristics. So we don't know. We will find out. But anyone who's connected to this Gulenist faction in the army will be expelled from the army. In fact, that process began even now recently, and they will be expelled from the army.
هل هم يعترفون على بعضهم؟
Do they
Yes,
confess
many of
over
them.
each other?
Many of them are now confessing, and they're giving information about each other.
مباشرة يتكلمون
Just
دون
straight
تعذيب
straight
ودون
away, do they speak without any torture, without any beating, without any? Do they speak just
Yes,
directly?
yes, of course. First of all, there has been no torture at all. Some of the, I want to clarify this, some of the pictures that were published in some Western media were presented as proof for torture. There has not been any torture. They have been stripped of their military uniforms, that is true. Because first of all, this is part of the investigation. They're no longer soldiers, and they have to leave their military uniforms. And they were just in detention. So it was not torture, because we have zero tolerance to torture. And obviously, I just spoke to our Minister of Justice this morning. They are conducting a very serious survey, investigation into these allegations. If there was any mistreatment, any physical maltreatment of the detainees, we will certainly look into this very carefully, because we take these claims very seriously.
هل كان هناك تخوف من خيانة الحرس؟
Did you have any fear from the Republic, the guard, the presidential guard? Why was it dissolved, the presidential guard? Why was it dissolved? Did you fear it?
Well, that presidential guard is supposed to protect the president, but they played a key role in the coup attempt, so we have to be extra careful here. Secondly, some of the elements of the presidential guard is ceremonial. They're there for ceremonies and when we receive heads of states and things like that. Now we are going to have a very different makeup. There will be a presidential guard, but it will be selected specially. There will be some ceremonial soldiers, but again, they will be selected and trained in a different way so that such things do not happen again. Because we make a very clear distinction between these coup plotters and Gülenists and other criminals and the rest of the Turkish army. We want to clear them from this stain. And we want the Turkish army to be serving their country, not to someone's interests or taking orders from somewhere else. You see, can you imagine a situation where you work as a civil servant or as a soldier, and you are given certain privileges, you are paid a salary, and then you use certain power as, say, as a director of an institution or of an official agency, or you're a minister, etc. So you take your salary from the government, you use your power and privileges as part of the government and the bureaucracy, but you take your orders from someone else. This is not acceptable. No democratic country will ever allow this to happen. Can you imagine a situation, say in the United States, some groups belonging to some sect, cult, infiltrating into the US government, coming into key positions in the CIA, in the FBI, in the Defense Ministry, in the Foreign Ministry, in Homeland Security, using all the powers of the American state, but then taking orders from their cult leaders somewhere else. No country will ever allow that. So it's the same situation here. So we want to make a clear distinction between these criminals who claim to be soldiers who had uniforms on that day and the rest of the Turkish army, so that people will have confidence in their army again.
The percentage of those who were complicit in the coup from the presidential guard, what was the percentage, please?
Well, the commander of the presidential guard was involved personally, and a few other people, and that's enough. Within a military hierarchy, if your commander asks you to do something, most of the rank and file soldiers just followed orders. And they will be cleared from any charges if they did not kill anyone during the coup attempt. But those who took the orders and shot at people and killed them on the street, of course, will be charged.
There are some leaks that were circulated from the British intelligence saying that there is another coup that is prepared for and will be more bloody, and perhaps Turkey will witness a civil war, and there are some British good offices to perhaps make the citizens leave Turkey. Do you think that this is feasible? How do you see this happening?
There are always these rumors that there will be a stage 2, stage 3. The coup plotters have plan B, plan C. I will answer with an answer that our president gave a few days ago when we visited the Turkish parliament here. Bring it on. Let them come. Whatever they have, let them come. We are here. We are here for our own country. We are here to protect our democracy, our freedom, our rule of law. And we will protect our unity, our nation. All the measures have been taken in terms of security and safety of the people. I'll give you an example. We have the state of emergency in effect right now in Turkey, right? There has been no negative impact on the daily lives of the people on the streets. You've been here for a few days. Now you see Ankara, you see Istanbul. To the contrary, people are out on the streets celebrating their victory on July 15th and 16th because they stopped the coup. And they're right, they're entitled to that pride that, you know, they have written history with their bare hands. Now they are all out on the streets, you know, they're celebrating, they're going to coffee houses, they're socializing with people, they're traveling. So there has been no negative impact on ordinary people's lives. The state of emergency is primarily for the state, actually, to make sure that such coup attempts, etc., do not happen again. They may come up with some ideas to confuse people's minds, that there will be another attack, there will be another this and that. There might be. I never rule out that possibility. But we take our precautions very seriously. We protect our people, we protect our president, prime minister, our state institutions.
What are the precautionary measures that you've taken?
Well, we've taken a number of course, I cannot tell you now, you know, what they are. For example, we have increased you know, air security around the presidential palace, around the parliament, around the prime minister's office. So any air attack they may plan, yeah, will be destroyed immediately. So we have taken all these measures.
From any airplane, Turkish or otherwise? So the presidency, the parliament,
and many other security measures. Obviously.
Are there any kind of secret measures? Do you have the capacity now to know your enemy, to separate the wheat from the chaff in order to understand what went wrong and to perhaps make the institutions more strong?
We are conducting a very comprehensive study right now, looking at each name, their background, the schools they came from, you know, their career, etc. In fact, the military itself is taking a number of measures against these people, because the military is also hurt by this. They are very disappointed, that is the generals. They want to obviously reclaim their respect in the eyes of the Turkish people, because one of the key elements of democracy is the civilian control of the armed forces. If you don't put armed forces under civilian control, elected by the people, you end up with a military rule. In order for citizens to feel safe, free, secure, and exercise their democratic rights, the armed forces have to be under the control of civilian authorities. This is one of the cornerstones of democracy. This is exactly what we're doing now. Of course, that was the case before, but now we want to make sure that these rogue elements, you know, within the army do not manipulate the system to their advantage to turn things around.
هل هناك
Is there any change as well in the policy of opening the military bases that might be used by the Americans, like the Incirlik base, for example?
Well, Incirlik is open. It's used as a NATO basis against Daesh, and the operations are going on normally. We are part of the anti-Daesh coalition, and we lived through this coup attempt, but the Daesh threat remains relevant and real. We have to fight against these terrorists, Daesh terrorists, at the same time. The PKK terrorism is still there. It hasn't gone away, so we have to fight against them also. So in terms of external security, border security, or any threats coming from outside the country, we have taken a number of measures also. Of course, the first few days were difficult to maintain full control of the security situation, but things are very much under control right now. We are aware of the security challenges Daesh, PKK, and others present, but we are as determined to fight against Daesh threat, Daesh terrorism, PKK terrorism, as we were before the July 15 coup attempt. And we are working, by the way, very closely with our allies in the anti-Daesh coalition, from United States to Qatar, from Saudi Arabia to other countries that are part of the anti-Daesh coalition.
Could you please tell me frankly, what state can confront all these enemies at the same time? A coup d'etat from the side of the army, the Golanists, infiltrators, ISIS, the PKK, and as well as the different conspiracies that are taking place in Turkey. What is your capacity to surmount these challenges?
Well, only God is all-powerful. We can only try with the means that we have. Our responsibility is to make the best use of what we have. Now, of course, there are all these security challenges around us, as you mentioned, and there are others, like the migration issue, the Syrian war, and international terrorism, human trafficking, and many other things. I believe we have the means and the capabilities to deal with many of these problems, as long as we have no people betraying us from inside, and our friends and neighbors and allies working with us on these common security threats. We have a very good working relationship with most of our neighbors on all of these issues. Recently, as you know, we have began normalizing relations with Russia. We have good cooperation with our...
Don't you think that some of them were complicit in the coup d'etat? I mean, your friends.
Well, as I said, I mean, I can only look at the official statements and the facts. I know there's a lot of speculation in the media.
However, yes, the states or the other countries
like Qatar
had different stances during the coup d'etat. Qatar, for example, from the first minute did condemn the coup. However, some countries were late 15 hours and others were also late for 10 hours, and some people called the coup an uprising and some were hesitant. What about your foreign kind of policy? Would it see a different kind of a trend in accordance with the enemies and the friends?
Well, each country may have had a special situation in terms of trying to understand what was happening at that time, that night, because that was night, and maybe in some countries it was midnight, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, etc. Some, as you said, reacted immediately. They contacted us, many countries. We informed them about this, and they prepared their official statements. afterwards. But I don't remember any country the next day that did not make a strong statement against the coup.
We do remember.
Yes, of course. And again, I'm looking at the timeline. Might be a good indicator or might be misleading, as I said, depending on each country's situation. But the thing is that
please leave this aside. Leave this aside. There is an official appeal or invitation for every single ambassadors in Turkey from all across the world to be at the assembly on the 16th of July. There were no Arab ambassadors. Only 70 other ambassadors. Only Salim al-Shafi, the Qatari ambassador, was there. Perhaps the Palestinian ambassador as well. All the other ambassadors from the Arab countries were absent. How did you read such invitation or such presence?
Well, I know the ambassador of Qatar, who is also a good friend of mine, who is really a great diplomat, who is a friend of Turkey, who serves his country and represents his country very well here. He was present at the extraordinary
yes, he represented his country.
I don't know.
Qatar, yes.
Yes, there may have been few other ambassadors. I don't know because we were dealing with the situation in Istanbul at
Yes.
that time.
But perhaps you will have your own stance in accordance with this extraordinary meeting, whereby some ambassadors were absent and some came.
Yeah, well, as I said, we were dealing with the situation in Istanbul at that time. But I know one or two ambassadors who were present, and Salim was one of them, and we thank him and the state of Qatar for that. But again, I don't know the specific situation of ambassadors. Were they here? Were they outside the country? Were they somewhere else? Were they reporting? But whether maybe they took or they didn't take that meetings, I don't know.
There were different civil service at different embassies. Why did they come?
Yeah.
Your policy before the failed coup had the propensity of perhaps reinstating the relations with the coup in Egypt through some ministers. The coup regime threw spanners at the work at the Security Council. And do you think that you will be having a different stance vis-à-vis Egypt in the future because of their position?
Well, it's really very unfortunate that Egypt tried to, block that statement at the UN Security Council. But I guess for understandable reasons, because they came to power through a military coup. It didn't happen in Turkey. The Turkish people stopped that. They stood with their elected government and elected president. And I think everybody sees, what that means. We value the people of Egypt and their struggle for freedom and democracy. The government has taken a position like this. It's sad, but it's their decision. But what matters is that we have stopped this coup in this country, and our people have written history, and this is what will be remembered.
The Bakir Moses, the Minister of Justice on the 26th of July said that the USA, or perhaps he said that Gulen might seek perhaps to flee the USA and to go to a different country like Egypt or Mexico or perhaps different countries. Do you think that the USA might shake off the embarrassment and let Gulen go to Egypt perhaps or any other country?
Well, you will have to ask Americans that, but well, he may flee to another country, to a third country, in Europe, in Latin America, I don't know. But what matters is that now we have this legal process going on with the United States. We have an extradition agreement signed in 1980, we believe, and many legal experts agree, that there is sufficient legal ground for Gülen's extradition to Turkey. Now, we are now gathering all the evidence, putting them in a file, and very soon those files will be sent to the U.S. authorities, U.S. Minister of Justice, and we would like to see, obviously, full cooperation from the American side for his extradition. This is in line with our partnership and with our bilateral relations, because we talk about model partnership between Turkey and the United States. And as part of this agreement, we are hoping that the American authorities will do, what is legally possible and necessary to extradite Fethullah Gülen to Turkey. And we hope that this issue will not become a matter of tension or disagreement between our two countries.
There are some question marks vis-à-vis the French authorities and the closure of its consulate or embassy just a day before the coup. Do you think that the French had information about the coup, or did they provide you with any information?
No, a small correction. The French authorities closed their Istanbul consulate, I believe, a day before the Nice attack. And they had somehow intelligence, about a possible Daesh attack to French targets, but it didn't happen in Turkey. It happened in France, in Nice. Now, of course, the French authorities are trying to understand, how that they got that intelligence, but they were unable to stop the Nice attack. So it was related to a possible Daesh threat or target rather than to anything that was happening in Turkey at that time. And I believe it happened 2 or 3 days before the coup.
The 9th of August will be the day whereby Vladimir Putin and Mr. Erdogan will meet after the frayed kind of relationship. How do you think the meeting will press ahead? This meeting might become a historic one as well.
Well, this will be the first meeting since we began normalizing relations between the two countries. As you know, the two leaders spoke on the phone first, and they agreed in that phone conversation to meet in person before the G20 summit in early September. After this coup attempt, President Putin called our president. He expressed his support for elected government. He expressed his condolences for the death in Turkey, and they agreed that to meet sometime in August in St. Petersburg. Now, of course, we have a process of normalizing relations in the economic field, in trade, in tourism, in cultural area, in many other, because it's a very extensive relationship. We are hoping some good progress, on all of these issues. The Russian side has already taken a number of very positive steps to normalize relations. The Russian tourists are coming, Russian businessmen, Turkish businessmen, they're meeting again, they're renewing their contracts and businesses, etc. So it's a very good sign. So we will talk about that. Of course, we will talk about Syria, we will talk about, other issues of common concern. I'm sure our president will give a more detailed brief or information to President Putin about this coup attempt, what happened. And so the Russian position has been very positive since normalization began, and they've been very vocal and supportive of the elected government and the president.
The two pilots who downed the Russian fighter jet and those who were also complicit in the coup, did they confess to what they did, and did they confess that they had a link with Golan?
Not yet. We don't have anything of that kind now, but there are suspicions that the Gülenists may have a hand in that incident. So that's why now there is an investigation going on. We will find out more, once we have more information about this issue. So we're not ruling out any possibilities.
بصفتك
In your capacity,
بصفتك
or perhaps as you are a participant of putting the agenda of Mr. Erdogan, what are the items of the agenda whereby or when Mr. Erdogan will meet Putin?
Well, a number of issues on bilateral relations, as I said, economic, political, and other issues. We will talk about regional issues, the fight against Daesh. That's a common goal. Of course, Syria. We will talk about Syria as well.
Do you seek perhaps putting an end to what the Russians
what
are doing with the civilians?
It's better, we want to talk to the Russian side to stop this bloodshed in Syria, because the situation is getting really, really bad in Syria. It has been like that for some time. Unfortunately, the whole world is turning a blind eye to the human suffering in Syria. We've never seen anything like this, in modern history since the end of the Second World War. Close to 500,000 people have died. Millions have become refugees. Even though now we focus on this post-coup situation in Turkey, we follow the situation in Syria very closely. And our position has not changed on Syria. As long as the Assad regime remains in power, Syria will not see peace, integrity, prosperity. And the Syrian people obviously deserve much better than what they're going through right now. So we will certainly talk to our Russian counterparts about what we can do together to stop this war. We will continue to talk to Americans, of course the Saudis and Qataris and others, to bring about a solution and bring an end to this insane war in Syria. We have 3 million refugees in Syria, in Turkey, Syrian refugees. We live with them every single day, and we see their suffering firsthand. Alhamdulillah, of course, they are safe in Turkey. They are looked after in Turkey. They are provided with, food and medicine and education and things like that. But of course, it's never like living in your own country. We were in Europe several months ago with our president. This was before we signed the Turkey-EU migration deal. And at that time, this was back in October, around 5,000–6,000 people were trying to cross into Europe illegally every single day. And the Europeans were having a hard time to deal with the situation. And I believe they really failed miserably in their response to the refugee issue. So in one of the meetings, one of the very top EU officials said that, all these people from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and other places want to come to Europe because Europe is their preferred destination, because Europe is so good, so beautiful that they all want to come to Europe. So he was bragging about it. And I got so angry. And I said, with all due respect, the one country they want to go to, all these refugees from Syria and other, it's not Europe, it's not Germany, it's not France, it's not even Turkey. It's their own country. They just want to live in their own country. You don't even understand this. You don't have even this sympathy for the suffering these people are going through. Who cares about the beautiful streets of France, Paris, Berlin, etc., if you don't have a home? Who cares about these nice-looking buildings in European capitals if you know nothing about what happened to your father or mother or your husband, your wife? And how can you even live? They don't even have the sympathy, for these people who've gone through this suffering. 50, 60 years ago, millions of Europeans had become refugees in Europe during the Second World War, during the Nazi rule. Millions of them. We have taken them. Other countries have taken them. But I'm looking at the way they're looking at the Syrian refugees and other refugees. I'm at a loss as how insensitive some of them can be in regards to these people. So the problem is not with the Syrian refugees, I said. The problem is not with Turkey. The problem is not with Greece. The problem is what's going on in Syria. That war that you are practically doing nothing to stop. That criminal Assad regime that is killing people every single day. That is the problem. It's not the Syrian people. It's not the refugees. It's not the Syrian refugee children looking for few hours of comfort and quiet. It's our insensitivity to their suffering. That is the problem.
Would it be possible for you to accept the Assad in any kind of a compromise provided
Our
by the
position
Russians or
on
the Americans or
the
others?
Assad regime has not changed. It's the same. We believe as long as the Assad regime remains in Syria, there will not be peace and prosperity in Syria, because the existence of Assad regime is in fact feeding Daesh. These two problems in Syria, the two monsters of Syria, are the Assad regime on the one hand and Daesh on the other. I know the Assad regime is trying to use Daesh to sell itself to the world, saying that if I am gone, this Daesh terrorists will take over Syria. Maybe it's the other way around. When you're gone, when Daesh is gone, there will be a third option, which is the Syrian people. And they will own their own country. We don't have to choose between Daesh and the Assad regime. Both have to go. We have to fight against both so that Syrian people can decide for their own future, with Arabs and Kurds and Turkoman, with Muslims and Christians and Sunni, Alevi, etc., for a democratic, inclusive, pluralistic Syria. It's only the Syrian people who can build this, not this criminal regime, not these Daesh terrorists.
What are the other themes on the agenda of Putin Erdogan?
Of course, there are other regional, global issues that we will have to deal with, like Ukraine, the situation in Crimea, and other security challenges in the region. Because Russia is a pivotal country, in world politics, and we look forward to working with them again on these issues of common interest.
Everyone is looking for this meeting. Are we going to witness any surprises?
Well, we look forward to a good meeting. Hopefully no unpleasant surprises, but there might be some pleasant surprises. Would it be possible
to witness a rapprochement between the Russians and the Turks, so that the USA and the West might be punished because of their position vis-à-vis the coup?
The Russians have taken a very clear position against the coup, and other countries also. When we deal, with this situation, first of all, our guiding principle, whether we're talking about Syria or other issues, is that foreign policy, international relations are not a zero-sum game. When we have good relations with the United States, it doesn't mean that we have to turn our back to Russia or vice versa. A lot of people in Turkey made these mistakes for many, many years. Some of these westernizing elites in Turkey believe that in order for Turkey to be part of the West, part of Europe, Turkey has to lessen its relationship with the Arab and Islamic world. We said no to that. This is not a zero-sum game. They are not mutually exclusive, they are mutually empowering. We are an EU candidate and we want to enter the EU, but it doesn't mean that we will not have any relationship with Middle East countries, North African countries, with the Gulf countries, etc., or vice versa. Because we have good relations, with the Gulf countries or with Muslim countries, it doesn't mean that, we turn our back to Europe or the United States. I know some people want us to choose one side only, but why should we? This is a world that belongs to all of us, and we want to make the best use of it. For the good of our people, for the good of our region, for the Muslim Ummah, for everyone, for the humanity as a whole. And this is such an interdependent world. Just imagine How many Muslims are living in Europe? Millions, 20, 25 million Muslims. How many Westerners are living in Muslim countries? Millions. Millions of Muslims are living in Christian communities. Millions of Christians are living in Muslim communities. So there is no need for this kind of block thinking that, we are one block against another. We can certainly have, more sophisticated, interdependent relationship, with all the countries. That's why you say, look, we want to have good relations with Russia as well as with the United States. We want to develop further relations with Arab and Muslim countries as well as with African countries, Latin American countries. Why shouldn't we?
The failed coup d'etat, would it expedite perhaps the presidential model of governance rather than the parliamentary model of governance? Or would it be possible to have the presidential governance kind of
This is an
type?
ongoing debate, as you know. Our president is calling for a presidential system. We would like to see a broad societal debate, let society with different political figures and political angles debate this issue. And of course, this is not the issue of the day. Now we are dealing with the coup situation and we want to overcome this and put an end to this. Once we leave this behind us, there will be a debate again about this. But our president has said from the very beginning that if people want this system, the presidential system, we'll go for it. We're not going to impose anything that is not demanded and approved of by the people. So there will be a debate. There will be some who will be in favor. There will be some who will be against it. But at the end of the day, the parliament can decide, obviously, whether they want to have a referendum or not. If there are enough numbers for a referendum, it can be taken to the people. And then they can decide if there is sufficient support for it. We believe that a presidential system will be more effective. It will reduce many of the problems in the state bureaucracy. It will create new opportunities for good governance. More importantly, the separation of powers is very well established in the presidential system. The parliament, the executive branch, and the judiciary. Those powers will be separated fully and firmly, and that way we can have a more effective form of governance in Turkey.
I'm just looking at the numerous numbers of our viewers. Perhaps we might provide a question from Jamal Shams, who says what Turkey will do when the USA refuses perhaps to hand over Fethullah Gulen.
I don't want to speculate on something that didn't happen yet. So we are hoping that we will have good cooperation, from the United States on this issue. But there is a big expectation among the Turkish public that the United States will extradite him, again, within the rule of law, according to the extradition agreement that we have between the two countries. If he's not extradited, it will create problems in our bilateral relations, obviously. And a lot of people will think here that for one reason or another, if Gulen is allowed to stay in the United States, he will be seen as protected there. And it will be very difficult for Americans to explain to the Turkish people why they're keeping him in the United States.
Saeed Abagon is asking, do you fear that these layoffs amongst the army and the other state institutions might lead to chaos and perhaps a vacuum in the administration of the state itself?
No, I'm glad you asked this question. To the contrary, removal of these Gülenists and other coup plotters and criminals from the Turkish state institutions will make the Turkish state stronger, more transparent. It will not make it weaker. Because now we are looking at this and in retrospect, looking at the past, probably many of the problems that we've had in terms of efficiency, in terms of some policy issues, they were caused by these people. So in fact, it will give us transparency, it will give us efficiency, and it will establish trust again in the state, in the army, etc. So we're confident that things will move even more smoothly, as we have seen over the last couple of weeks since the coup. The economy is doing well. There has not been any negative impact on the economy. People are traveling, they are doing trade, and they're on the streets celebrating, and so on and so forth. So there has not been any weakness in terms of governance, in terms of state services.
كثير من الأسئلة
Plenty of questions, numerous questions say, what are you to do if there were some countries that are complicit in the coup? What will you do vis-à-vis them?
Well, first of all, we have to find out and verify if there are any countries like that. As I said, we have to look at their official statements and positions, and but the thing is that now the coup is behind us. Now we're working very closely with our neighbors and friends to make sure that these things do not happen again, and we remain committed to democracy, rule of law, and if there are any criminal elements of this group in other countries, we want to make sure that they're captured and brought to justice. And of course, we expect full cooperation from our neighbors and other countries in that regard.
How do you look at the future of Turkey in light of making this coup failing, as well as the numerous challenges attached to it?
Well, I believe we will come out stronger out of this process, because my generation didn't live through a coup. My children didn't live through a coup. Now we did, for the first time. And I think people now know the value of democracy, freedom, and the rule of law firsthand. Now they realize how precious it is, because we all fought for it, and we all paid a price. And I think this sense of national unity, which was reflected in the picture that was given in the meeting with the president and the leaders of political parties, will make Turkey stronger, will strengthen and deepen our democracy. And I believe people, ordinary people from all walks of life, have a renewed sense of confidence and trust in their political system, in their political leadership today. And of course, we want to turn this into an opportunity for more democracy, more freedom, more prosperity for our own people as well as for the people in the region.
On this note, Dr. Ibrahim Kالن, the spokesperson for the Turkish presidency, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you for your interventions, your answers. I would like to ask you as well, my dear viewers, I would like to thank Mr. Ali Matar, the interpreter who interpreted the interventions of Mr. Ibrahim Kالن into Arabic. He did a splendid job. I would like to thank my colleague Mohammed Al-Banna and all the other colleagues from Doha. This is Ahmed Mansour saluting you. Peace be upon you, and assalamu alaikum. Thank you.